Hey there, everybody. This is a cool little show we're going to have. It's called GMs for Hire. This is the pilot episode. My name is RJ. I'm joined by Matt. We've got Will. We've got Jamil on the call here. Just a bunch of sports guys. We want to talk about sports. We need an outlet to do it. I think this is going to work. Leave feedback. You know, we're open. We've never done anything like this before. We're going to, just kind of wing it and see how this goes. This past weekend was the NFL draft. That's obviously the big talking point, especially during this quarantine with no other sports going on right now. We're going to talk about the NFL draft and our biggest takeaways. We can start with a recap. Will, go ahead and lead us off here with a recap of, some of the top picks and if they fit or not.
Well, I think to start off with the 2020 NFL draft, first off, being a virtual draft, it was very interesting to see because this was brand new for a lot of people. It was really weird not to see the picks come up to the stage with their jerseys and their hats and everything such as that. Everybody's back at home. It was just a different look for everybody. But I think it was very interesting for a lot of people. A lot of people were very entertained, completely away from the picks. A lot of people were entertained by Roger Goodell, how he was just standing up sometimes and then he was laying down on his couch eating M&Ms. And then he almost seemed drunk part of the time, but we'll get to that later. He definitely was starting to slur some words and stuff, probably sipping some rum and coke. But as the draft was going on, whenever it first started, I think the first couple picks were just as followed. I think 1 through 6 were very obvious to go from Joe Burrow and then number 2 being Chase Young. I think this was all obvious. Andrew Thomas, offensive line, was definitely an issue for the Giants. At number 4, who was the number 4 pick off the top of my head? Why do I not remember?
The number 4 pick.
Oh, I'm thinking of Jeffrey Okudah. I forgot Jeffrey Okudah at 3. And then Andrew Thomas at 4. Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert. I think that was all very obvious. I was kind of interested to see Derek Brown go at 7 instead of Isaiah Simmons. But nonetheless, I mean, a lot of the picks in the first round really went as followed. I think there were a little couple first round picks that really kind of shot me different. Wasn't excited to see a couple of the names called, but nonetheless, I think honestly the first round went about as easy as it could get. It really seemed like every team just fit their need. Not too many trades happened. Nothing really too crazy. This was the first time since 2015 that there were no draft picks traded in the first 10 picks. So I think everything was just kind of as is. Everything was just kind of went pretty smoothly.
So you mentioned how some of the draft picks some of the picks were kind of out of order. Does anybody think that Henry Ruggs should have been the first wide receiver drafted, Jamil?
No, honestly, I don't think he should have been the first wide receiver drafted. I think it should have came down to his teammate Jerry Jeudy or Oklahoma CeeDee Lamb. I think both of them showed that they were the better receivers in college through their body of work. What Ruggs does have, though, is the speed, and we all know that the Raiders love their speed going back to the Al Davis era where they picked Darius Hayward Bay in the top 10. So I don't think we should be surprised by anything the Raiders do. They clearly have a plan that we don't know about with the way they've been drafting. We'll talk more about that later. But no, I don't think he should have been the first, but good for him to get it started.
Yeah, it seems the Raiders are pretty intent on just drafting Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State guys. Whoever makes the playoff or gets close to the playoff, the Raiders are just going to take all your guys, which isn't a bad, way to go because, they got to the playoff for a reason, right? So let's start. What else surprised you about the first round, Matt?
What surprised me about the first round, for sure, would be Andrew Thomas going 4th. He does fill a need for the Giants, and he'll be able to create good schemes for Saquon Barkley, of course. But he was not one of the higher-ranked O-linemen. I believe he was top 5, but I expected someone more like Mekhi Becton or someone of that nature to go before him at least.
I was shocked to see that Jedrick Wills wasn't the first offensive tackle off the board. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was all Alabama from the start. I thought Jedrick Wills was by far going to be the number 1 off, but I've been wrong before.
This draft was different. We had the 4 elite tackles, and I don't think anybody had the same order as who's the best.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think anybody agreed either.
You had everybody just all over the place. I
A
know
lot of
people
people.
loved Mekhi Becton's size, but then when you look at Pro Football Focus, they didn't even have him ranked in their top 50 as far as prospects. So size is obviously something you can't teach, and I know teams fell in love with that, especially the Jets, which I'm going to get to later. But yeah, this was a very interesting draft. I believe because of the lack of the meetings and stuff, because of the current climate we're in, very few guys had pro days, couldn't do visits, things like that. I think you had a wide range of opinions because it's all tape. The big thing was the tape and then the combine, but there just weren't those extra meetings, those extra pro days, all the extra stuff that GMs and coaches are used to doing. They didn't have that this year, and I think that's why we saw such a wide range of opinions with Henry Ruggs being the first receiver. Like, all we heard was that Jerry Jeudy was the best route runner maybe ever. And then you can't argue with what CeeDee Lamb's production was at Oklahoma, but somehow Henry Ruggs was drafted before both of them. And then, like you mentioned, with Andrew Thomas being the first tackle, everybody had a different order. It seems like the quarterbacks were the only position that everybody knew the order and had a pretty clear cut as who was the best, second, third, all that. So
That's for the first round at least. When it comes to quarterbacks, but I think we should move more into like team building. I do think no matter the order, many teams did get things they needed. We could start there.
yeah, so as far as the teams go, who would you say, Matt, would be your biggest winner and your biggest loser from the draft?
Biggest winner, I'm gonna have to go to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm so high on CeeDee Lamb. He's a fantastic talent. He knows how to win. And honestly, I think with the addition of CeeDee Lamb, it might be a hot take, but I think Dak Prescott can become an elite quarterback with the addition of CeeDee Lamb. He's had his weapons. He had Michael Gallup, who had a big season. He had Amari Cooper, who just re-signed. But Lamb was a fantastic pick, and I'd say another weapon that they needed. Moving past the first round, they had Trayvon Diggs in the second round, a corner from Alabama. He's also a known winner, and he does fill a need. They have the Cowboys haven't really had. I mean, I don't think they've had a good defense in years since like the DeMarcus Ware days. So them going Diggs in the second round, and then defensive tackle Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma as well. I'm sorry, in the third round. You know, these are big needs, and I think Jerry Jones and the Cowboys filled them very well.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jones should be really happy. I mean, CeeDee Lamb fell right in his lap, and Trayvon Diggs probably should have been a first-round pick. And the fact that he was there in the second round, and then in the third round with Gallimore, after you already signed Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe on the defensive line this offseason, to add Neville Gallimore, yeah, they're really building that defense. And in a year where they're not sure if they want to pay Dak or not, there's no excuses now. I think Dak has everything in front of him. There's no excuse. You've got star running back. You've got a really, really good receiving core. He's got the offensive line that we know about. I think it's all on Dak now. Will, what do you think for biggest winner and biggest loser from the draft?
If I had to pick a winner, personally, I'm going Carolina. I think they focused. I mean, obviously, there's no thinking about it. They completely annihilated the defensive need that they had. I mean, when you looked at their team needs, it probably went from linebacker to secondary to D-line. I mean, they needed complete a defensive like reboot, basically. They needed to get rid of most of their personnel. They needed to get new faces in there, at least people who could compete for reps. And that's exactly what they did. Every single pick they took was defensive. From Derek Brown, they also got Jeremy Chin. I want to say in this was it the second or the third round they took Chin at SIU? Second round. I know they had more picks in there defensively. It just seemed like they did everything they could. Yatir Gross-Matos, I know they also took for the edge. That defensive line is going to be terrifying now with Brian Burns, Kawan Short. That team's going to be electric, and they're going to get to quarterbacks fast. And especially now, if you look in that division has very standstill quarterbacks such as Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees. If they're going to have defensive prowess to be able to get to the quarterbacks so quickly, it could be a big step up because I think their offense was in a point to where it just needed to develop together. With Teddy Bridgewater, they have Christian McCaffrey, and they have that young receiving core with DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel. a lot of young pieces to where they could actually put stuff together. I just think that the defense needed to bring in new personnel, and that's exactly what they did. When I'm looking at a loser, I'm thinking of my big fandom myself, the Chicago Bears. I think we couldn't have done much worse. I think we have 10 tight ends on our roster now. Yes, that's going to get cut down, but whenever we're looking at the second round, of course, not having a first round pick it sucks. But whenever you get to the second round and then your big need being secondary, and you take Cole Kmet, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. We just gave Jimmy Graham a big contract in the offseason. We needed wide receiver help. We needed secondary help. You could argue that we needed a quarterback. I think that's kind of obvious. But granted, I don't think this is the draft to do it, at least not in the second round. But tight end was definitely not the need at the first pick that we had. And then we go and take Jalen Johnson. It's not a bad pick, but we really desperately needed offensive line help as well, and we don't pick those up until the later rounds. People who are probably just going to sit at backup, be depth positions at that point. I just think the Bears had an opportunity to pick a lot better picks, and they kind of flopped on it.
I have never in my life heard of a team having 10 tight ends.
Neither have I.
That's literally insane. So yeah, when the Bears picked the tight end, that was definitely a head scratcher for most people. Jamil, what about you?
For me, my biggest winner is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. Their offseason started off with a bang. They went ahead and cut Xavier Rhodes. They traded Trayvon Diggs. And in the draft, they answered both those needs right off the bat. At pick 22, they went and got Justin Jefferson out of LSU, a great slot receiver that's going to be able to bounce off of Adam Thielen between going to the slot and going to the boundary. I think he's going to be great after they catch with Kirk Cousins. And their second pick in the first round, they traded back with the Niners, went and got Jeff Gladney, one of the better corners in this draft. He's been battle tested. He's playing in the Big 12. We all know they put up numbers. They play no defense, but he was one of the few that actually played some defense, went up against some of the better receivers in the conference, like Denzel Mims, who went to the Jets in this draft. Then after that, they went and got Ezra Cleveland, and one of the better tackles in this draft. They went back and got another corner in Cameron Dratzler. And then they got two great defensive guys in James Lynch and Troy Dye. I think the Vikings killed this draft. And showing the division rival, the Packers, who didn't have such a great draft, who we'll talk much more about later, it just puts the Vikings in a much more better position to take control of their division. And we also saw the Bears have a not so great draft. So the Vikings look to be the clear front runners over there in their division. And my biggest loser of the day, or for the whole draft, would be the Las Vegas Raiders, not the Oakland Raiders. They started off with Henry Ruggs, who we already talked about. That was the decision that we didn't agree on, but we can see why they did it. But after that, I thought they had a couple of head-scratching picks. They went and got Lynn Bowden from Kentucky, a gimmick player. We don't know if he's going to play quarterback, running back, receiver, and they picked him in the third round. I don't know if that was necessarily a great decision on their part. After that, they went ahead and got Tanner Muse from Clemson. He was a good player at Clemson. We all know they love Clemson players, but was he necessarily the right pick there to be a starting safety in the NFL? I don't know. They clearly have a strategy that we don't necessarily know about, so it'll be a matter of time until we see how that pans out for them.
Yeah, and a lot of people did not agree with the Damon Arnett pick either. I think most people had him as a second-round player.
Yeah, I think that was a slight reach on their part, but he's still a good corner, so we'll see what they're going to do there.
Yeah, see, I think Damon Arnett's a pretty good player too. But the fact that he was gone before, other DBs, like Trayvon Diggs, even Grant Delpit, Antoine Winfield, players like that, I think most people did not see that coming. I didn't see very many mock drafts that had Damon Arnett going in the first round.
It goes back to what you were saying with this. A lot of the positions were really neck and neck. A lot of people may have Damon Arnett in their top 5. Personally, I thought he was below. I thought he was around like cornerback 8 for me. Like I saw Fulton above him. I saw Terrell above him. I saw Diggs above him. I just saw a lot of people going before Arnett, and it could just be what I've seen off tape. But I just thought Arnett was a little bit lower for me, and so whenever I saw them go cornerback, it's a desperate need for them. But I thought whenever there was still Fulton on the board, there was still Diggs on the board. I think those are all second-round names, but I was shocked to see Arnett go in the first.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting pick. You mentioned the Minnesota Vikings and how they traded Stephon Diggs, and that leads into my biggest winner. The Buffalo Bills absolutely killed this offseason. I know we're focusing on the draft, but really I have to look at the entire offseason for Buffalo. Your first-round pick was essentially Stephon Diggs. They traded the first-round pick for him. That's essentially your first-round pick. Then they go out and they signed Mario Addison from Carolina. They signed Josh Norman from Washington, who I know most people think is a little washed up, but the last time he played under Sean McDermott, he was an all-pro and Carolina played in the Super Bowl. So if they can get him back to being what he should be, Buffalo got a great pick there. As far as the draft, getting A.J. Epinesa in the second round, I thought most people believed he was going to be a first-round pick. And for him to be coming off that other edge with Mario Addison, who I think is very underrated, coming off the other side, Buffalo's got a scary defense now. Like, they really do. They went and drafted Gabe Davis out of UCF. They needed receivers. I mean, they had the worst receiving core, I believe, in the NFL before this offseason. I was looking at some numbers the other day, and their third leading receiver was their tight end, and he had 300 yards. That's your third best receiver last year, had 300 yards. That's not going to win you very many games. And when you have a young quarterback like Josh Allen, we know he can move, we know he can run, things like that. He's going to need to throw. And for you to go get Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, a big body, you can put out there, that they have just killed it. And I personally am a big Jake Fromm guy. I don't think he's going to come in and challenge Josh Allen for the starting job necessarily. But I mentioned Josh Allen being a very mobile guy, and we know things happen in the NFL. And if he falls wrong or gets hit weird, Jake Fromm is a great backup quarterback. And I believe he's going to be a backup quarterback for a long time in the NFL. The fact that Jacob Eason and the FIU quarterback, James Morgan, the fact that both of those guys were drafted before Jake Fromm, to me, it's insane. Jake Fromm is the reason that Jacob Eason had to transfer, because Jacob Eason couldn't beat him out for the starting job. As far as James Morgan, look at FIU's competition. It's nowhere near Georgia's competition. And I understand Jake Fromm maybe didn't put up the flashy Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow numbers, but this guy, Georgia was 11-1 going to the SEC championship just about every year, and he's the quarterback of that team. He must be pretty good. Maybe he's not that dynamic playmaker guy, but he's not losing you football games either. And as far as losers, speaking of quarterbacks, man, Aaron Rodgers had a bad week. He to start in the first round. This is a guy who's 36 years old, or he's going to be 36 when the season starts. To go out and go ahead and draft his replacement, his supposed replacement in Jordan Love, wow. I really thought they would kind of try to build around Aaron Rodgers and really go for it one more time. But apparently the Packers have other thoughts. Matt LaFleur is not on the same page as Aaron Rodgers. Since Aaron Rodgers took over as the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, the Packers have not drafted a skill position player in the first round. Come on, no receivers, no running backs, no tight ends in the first round since you've had Aaron Rodgers. I understand when you have an elite quarterback, you expect him to elevate the play of the people around him. But wow, he's not Houdini. Like, he's going to need help. And you can't keep giving him Jeff Janis, Geronimo Allison, people like that. Like, give this guy a stud. He's got Devontae Adams. He's a top 10 receiver for me, not top 5. But, man, give him something else. Like, who else is Aaron Rodgers supposed to throw the ball to? He can't. But he can turn around and give it to Aaron Jones, which, by the way, he's a good player. What are you doing drafting A.J. Dillon in the second round? Are we trying to have a double-headed backfield now? Like, that's not an extra weapon for Rodgers to throw to. That's a guy that now Aaron Jones has got to look behind him, look over his shoulder. I don't know what kind of message Matt LaFleur is trying to send to that offense. They made it to the NFC Championship last year, which is a lot farther than I thought they were going to go. I thought that is the worst 13-win team I've ever seen in my life. That was insane. They should be happy with as far as they got. I think I would just try to build around Rodgers and maybe go for it one more time, like the Saints are doing with Drew Brees, going and getting Emmanuel Sanders. The Bucs went and got Brady, and we've got the weapons around him. Most teams, when you have an aging quarterback, you build around him. And it seems like the Packers are already trying to move off of him. So that was a huge shock to me. And Aaron Rodgers has to be a loser in this. That was just wow. Next, we have
I saw a stat that there were 36 wide receivers taken and not a single one taken by the Green Bay Packers.
How can you do that?
Yeah, the Packers had an obvious need that they failed to address in this draft.
You mean to tell me that in Green Bay they looked at their roster and then they looked at the potential wide receiver prospects, who I thought was one of the most stacked classes in a long time. You can get receivers in the 5th, 6th rounds and be satisfied with them. And I think teams like Cleveland did that, getting Donovan Peoples-Jones in the 6th. Like, there are wide receivers that went super late, and there were no reason not to get anybody. But you mean to tell me you can look at somebody with a 6th-round pick and see somebody like Donovan Peoples-Jones and go, nope, we'd rather have Jeff Janis? Like, what is that thought process?
And you have guys that went really late, like Gabe Davis that I mentioned in Buffalo. And how about KJ Hill in Baltimore? How is KJ Hill a 7th-round pick? Like, you're telling me the Packers didn't want any of those guys to give to Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's very questionable to me. But speaking of KJ Hill, this is going to lead us into our biggest reach and our biggest steal of the draft. And I've already mentioned mine. KJ Hill going in the 7th round to the Baltimore Ravens. Insane. Basically what I said about Josh Allen. We know he can move. We know he can do this and that. You need to give him some people to throw the ball to. I felt the same way about Lamar Jackson because I thought outside of Hollywood Brown, I just wasn't really impressed with their receivers. Willie Snead, he's just a guy for me. He's not a stud. He's not a star. They went out, got KJ Hill. You also drafted J.K. Dobbins, who can catch some passes out of the backfield. But KJ Hill going 7th round, that is an amazing steal. That guy is the all-time leader in receptions in the history of Ohio State football. Y'all realize Ohio State has had Ted Ginn, Chris Carter, Michael Thomas. No, KJ Hill has more catches, and he also has the 6th most receiving yards and the 6th most receiving touchdowns in the history of Ohio State football. That is a football factory, and the fact that this guy has put up those numbers, I was shocked that he was a 7th-round pick. I thought that was by far the biggest steal. As far as reach, I believe the Jets kind of reached on Mekhi Becton. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Mekhi Becton was ranked outside of the top 50 for Pro Football Focus and their list of prospects. The Jets are another team with a young quarterback that – who is Sam Darnold throwing the ball to this year? I'd love to know.
Rashad Perriman.
Robbie Anderson.
Rashad Perriman is their number 1.
Robbie Anderson.
He's gone.
On the
He's
Carolina
gone?
So,
Oh, he's gone?
yeah, he's on the Carolina Panthers now.
I did not. I completely missed that move.
The Jets have a huge need. And I understand you want to protect the young quarterback with Becton, who's a huge guy. But, man, what is Sam Darnold supposed to do when he does get the ball? Who's he throwing it to? That was – all 3 receivers were still on the board. The 3 first-round – the top 3, Ruggs, Judy, and Lamb. All 3 of those guys were there. And you're taking a tackle that Pro Football Focus, who is trusted by many, doesn't even think is in the top 50 prospects. That was a reach for me. I do think Becton can be good because you can't teach size, and the guy's just an animal. But that was a little questionable for me. Matt, I know what do you think as far as reach and steal?
Well, first, if I could talk about Becton a little bit to counter your argument. Although there were good wide receivers available, we saw Ruggs go right after him and a bunch of others even further past. But his size is nearly unmatched. He's 6'7", 364. It's a big guy. You gave Le'Veon Bell all this money, and you're going to need linemen to open holes for him, to create seams. And I think that's just something he can do. I think he has the potential to develop into an elite pass blocker, and his run game's already developed pretty well. And the Jets O-line allowed 52 sacks last year. Darnold might not have the best players to throw to, but you can't throw the ball if you're sacked. So getting Becton, I could see their thought process behind it. It'll help Bell get better, and it'll keep Darnold, give him a little bit more time. But my reach was Brandon Ayuk. He went 25th to the 49ers. Arizona State product, I believe. It's not a bad pick, and I think they do they didn't need a wide receiver. Or I'm sorry, he went second round? Okay. Hold on. They took Kinlaw instead with the first round selection, and they went Ayuk in the second. I'm sorry.
They traded up into the first round to grab him.
That's right. That's right. I got my notes all messed up. But which isn't bad. Kinlaw was not a bad pick, and I think it'll help their defense. But I think their defense isn't what lost them the Super Bowl. I think it was their offense. And where Kinlaw was in the draft, you still had Jefferson, Lamb. You still had a bunch of good wide receivers available. But they went Kinlaw, which isn't necessarily that bad. After this pick, they traded for Marquise Goodwin, which I guess you could say opens a hole for Ayuk. But I don't see him being anything amazing, at least not for the first couple of years. He was third-team All-American this year, but as an all-purpose player. So I'd probably see him on kick returns the most. But, Garoppolo, I'm sure I'll be able to use him somehow, but I wasn't too high on him, and I think he could have waited a little bit to get picked.
Yeah, I definitely think T. Higgins should have been drafted above Brandon Ayuk, and the fact that they took Ayuk instead of a guy, that's interesting. So
Your T. Higgins.
that's definitely a reach. As far who would be your steal of the draft though, Matt?
My steal is Ezra Cleveland for the Vikings picked, the offensive tackle. He actually did more than just playing ability. He actually saves the Vikings quite a bit of money, and you don't have to waste draft picks because they wanted Trent Williams originally, but they couldn't get him, so they wound up picking Cleveland in the second round. He's 6'6", 311. Boise State, the competition's not that amazing, but he was third among offensive linemen with a 4.9 340-yard dash. He's quick. He gets off the block really well. He has a pretty high ceiling, I'd say, and within a couple of years, you could be looking at another elite lineman in the league.
Yeah. What you got for us, Will?
Me personally, for my sleeper, it's not the most sexy pick. It's not anything that's going to really, get anything going for you. You're not going to think anything much of it. But I went with Tyler Biadasz going to the Cowboys in the fourth round, pick number 40 of the round. I thought it was really amazing for them to get such a high-profile center coming out. Center wasn't exactly the most stacked position in this draft class. I feel like it was Cesar Ruiz and a few other names. Biadasz was in there. But I know at the beginning of the year, one of the most highly touted offensive linemen coming out of Wisconsin, very highly touted among the center position. And I think this is a big need for Dallas, especially with Travis Frederick just announcing his retirement. I think going into the fourth round, having Biadasz slip all that way and to be able to still bite on him and get him, I think that's a huge pickup. It keeps that offensive line for Dallas really solid. Still, it's been one of their staples. They've always been known to have that huge, strong offensive line, and I think they're going to keep it going with Tyler Biadasz. For me, the reach, I think it was A.J. Terrell at pick number 16 in round 1 to the Atlanta Falcons. I saw a couple cornerbacks that I liked a little bit better. I liked Christian Fulton. I liked Trayvon Diggs. I think those were big. I think they had a little bit of a step up on A.J. Terrell. I liked A.J. Terrell in the first round, but I think with the options that you had, I think it could have been a better pick. And I feel like cornerback was definitely a positional need for Atlanta. But I just feel it was a head scratcher for me. I was trying to predict, as I was watching the first round, I was trying to predict who was going where. And whenever I saw the Atlanta Falcons come up, my first thought was Christian Fulton. I don't know why my head immediately went to Christian Fulton. I know that mid-first round was still a little high for him with a lot of teams, but I don't see why they didn't just trade back, maybe. I just thought 16 was too high of a number for me. I like him going to Atlanta, and I like that they addressed their need, but I thought the spot was just way too far. I think they could have traded back, accumulated a bit more picks, and still been able to get their guy if this is the guy they really wanted.
Yeah, I definitely think they could have traded back and still got their guy. I don't know that anybody else would have, had to jump up and take him. Jamil, what you got for us?
My biggest winner is going to be Josh Jones, offensive tackle out of Houston, going to the Arizona Cardinals in the third round. At some points in this draft process, people had Jones going in the back half of the first round, possibly going over Austin Jackson. They had him possibly being an early second round pick. But here he falls all the way to the third to a team that desperately needs offensive line help to help keep Kyler Murray running, to run that well-oiled machine the offense looks to be this season. So Jones can come in and immediately plug in one of the tackle spots and help be a building block on the offense that should be very exciting. My biggest reach of the draft is going to be round 1 pick 30 to the Miami Dolphins, going with Noah Igbenogany. I probably butchered his name, the corner out of Auburn. He's a very fast man-to-man guy. Will probably play in the slot for Miami. But my problem with the pick was the Dolphins this offseason went ahead and paid Byron Jones to be one of the most expensive corners of all time. Last year, they locked up Xavier Howard. So they already had their 2 corners locked up. So I was a little surprised they went corner here in the first round when they could have went either running back with a DeAndre Swift type, even though running backs in the first round seem to be voodoo magic these days. They could have went with a D end AJ Espinoza, but they went ahead and they doubled back later in the draft by trading for Matt Breida, and they got Curtis Weaver later in the draft. So they covered both those bases. So they clearly like this pick, but I just feel like they probably could have went to a different spot other than corner, having already addressed that in the past 2 off seasons.
They could have even, to add on to that, they could have even had their choice at running back. No running back had been taken so far.
Oh, yeah, I was very surprised they didn't pick a running back with all the struggles they had there last year, playing 3 to 4 different guys and no one even rushing for over 400, 500 yards. I really thought they were going to target one early, but like I said, they went ahead and got Matt Breida for a 5th later in the draft to pair with Jordan Howard. So they clearly had a plan, but I was surprised they didn't pick a running back at that time.
Yeah, corner was definitely a questionable pick there because, like you said, they've already paid Byron Jones and Xavier Howard a ton of money. Like, they've got to be 2 of the highest paid corners in the league, I believe. That's to take one in the first round. And let's be honest, you look at that division, the Jets, the Patriots, and the Bills, none of those receiving cores really scare you, right? Like, it's not like we're talking about the NFC South with all those receivers. Because, I mean, you look at what the receivers are in the NFC South, you can never have too many DBs to try to cover all those guys. The AFC East, though, it's not really a receiver league. I know I talked about the Bills earlier. They got a couple guys. But, man, other than that, I didn't think the Dolphins needed to go cornerback there. I definitely thought they should have gone running back. You got Tua. You got, hopefully, your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years. Give him a security blanket he can, hand the ball off to while he's still rehabbing.
I definitely agree that they should have drafted a running back. I do think that would help Tua a lot, take some of the pressure off of him. But Howard did miss 11 games last season with a knee injury. So although the corner pick could have waited, it's not the worst idea. Noah starting as a number 3 isn't the worst start. But you can learn a lot from Howard and Jones. That's a security blanket in its own. For the
I don't know. I think picking a nickel cornerback in the first round isn't the best use of a first round pick.
Yeah.
No, I think the worst team need they had was that offensive line. I think that offensive line was absolutely brutal. I mean, this was probably, if not the worst, one of the worst offensive lines in NFL history. I mean, they gave up sack after sack after sack. And, I mean, no quarterback's going to be able to have any time. And even taking Tua is a great pick, your franchise quarterback, as you said, RJ. But if you don't have enough time, and he's already got a bad hip, I mean, yeah, he can recover and everything from it, but those aren't injuries that go away and you come back 100%. That's something that's going to linger with you, And if you don't have time to throw it to anybody, what are you going to do? And I don't remember exactly if they addressed offensive line much, but I mean, it's something I know they took Austin Jackson in the middle of the first round, but after that, they need more than him. They desperately need more than him.
They went with Robert Hunt, the guard, in the second round.
Okay.
Yeah, big boy, Indiana. I don't hate the Austin Jackson pick because CeeDee Lamb was taken 1 pick before. Because if Dallas would have passed on CeeDee Lamb, I would have loved for Miami to go ahead and give Tua number 1. Because I know they have Devontae Parker, but really nothing else excites me in their wide receiver.
Yeah, that would have been hard for them to pass up. And I honestly thought they could have gone receiver at 18 over Austin Jackson, and then he came back at 30 or traded up from 30 to get either Jackson or Jones, who fell all the way to the 3rd.
Yeah. So, as far as the draft, I believe we got that covered. Does anybody have any parting shots because we're going to have another little segment here called our soapbox segment. And I'm actually going to be leading it off. And it's actually a look at next year's draft and kind of a potential pick that everybody seems to think is going to happen. Before I get into that, does anybody have any kind of last thought about this year's draft?
I do have one. Jamil, if you want to go ahead, go on it.
My fault. But I was gonna say, to counter y'all's point about Brandon Ayuk going to the Niners, I think that was actually a great pick for their system. I think he fits the team better than T. Higgins would have been, because in this Kyle Shanahan system, he wants guys that are going to get the ball and they're going to be able to run after the catch. Look at what they did with Deebo Samuel last year. I think Ayuk will come in this year and play a similar role, getting the ball and getting yards after the catch and helping out in the return game.
I was going to say, for anybody who anybody who may be watching this or doesn't know us, we're all USF students, so go Bulls, loud and proud. But our pride and our joy got absolutely screwed in this draft. Marlon Mack out of Indianapolis had an absolute career year last year. I want to say doubled his yard total from any other previous season. He got the most attempts he's ever had in this season. One touchdown short of tying his career record. Short career, only his third season, but he absolutely stood out. I think he had an absolute breakout season. Kind of primed himself for a great career. I think he was starting to step up, starting to take that RB1 role. And then in the second round pick, here comes Wisconsin running back Jonathan Taylor. And I was just kind of shocked to see that pick because I thought Indianapolis was loving it. It could be maybe just a background kind of thing because Indianapolis does run a lot of running backs. They had Jordan Wilkins. They had I'm missing another one off the top of my head, but I know that they. What was that?
They had Nyheim Hines.
Nyheim Hines, yes, out of NC State. Yeah, absolute. Like they had a three-headed rushing attack, and they'd switch out those running backs a lot. I don't know if Jonathan Taylor is supposed to be backup. I don't know if he's supposed to be starter, but it does from first glance to take a running back at the second round, especially when only one got taken in the first round. It almost seems like a smack in the face to Marlon Mack, and his carries are, I'd imagine, going to get cut in half. So I think he was kind of another big loser for me, and I wanted to get that off my chest because go Bulls. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I saw that, I immediately felt bad for him. That's a shame because he did have a really good year. Matt, you got anything for us?
Yeah, I want to mention the Baltimore Ravens because in this draft, the rich did get richer, at least for Baltimore. And it starts with Patrick Queen going 28th overall from LSU. Baltimore has produced some great linebackers over the years, Terrell Suggs, Ray Lewis, Ray Lewis, who still keeps close ties with the team, and I think can influence Patrick Queen a lot. They ranked 21st in rushing defense last season. And although they had a good season, that's definitely a weakness. Two of their linebackers, Bynes and Onwauser, or whatever it is, Patrick something, didn't re-sign.
That's a rough last name.
Yeah, it's rough. It happened. But they drafted Queen. They added Calais Campbell, who will definitely help the pass rush. But we saw LSU.
By the way, insane. All they had to give up for Calais Campbell was a 5th-round pick. Insane.
Oh, yeah. They definitely stole that, and that's going to do dividends for them and make them such a much better team. But Patrick Queen's going to come in. He's going to be a day one starter. He's mostly known for run defense, but with help from his defense that is developing, he can become a better pass rusher. And, the Ravens just had a really good draft, honestly. Not many mistakes for me.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. Getting J.K. Dobbins is a steal. He's going to be a future starter there for sure.
That was a steal.
And even RJ mentioned going late in that rounds. KJ Hill was a huge pick, and then I also felt like James Prochet at SMU.
Oh yeah, that was an absolute steal.
That's an absolute. Yeah, exactly. As Jamil said, absolute steal. I mean, he was phenomenal out at SMU, and the fact that, I thought it was even interesting to see James Prochet go before KJ Hill. And the fact that Baltimore was able to sneak both of them, and quietly too on day 3, just late picks, phenomenal draft. Phenomenal.
Yeah, they did not miss. So with the 2020 draft ending, we all know what this means. All eyes are on 2021 because that's what we are in America. We want things now. We need it. As soon as one thing ends, got to have something else. And this is leading into our soapbox segment that we are going to do every episode here. And I'm going to start us off. Speaking of the 2021 draft, it is very, very clear who's going to be the number one pick, we believe. The Jacksonville Jaguars are doing everything in their power to just bottom out, be the worst team in the league, and make sure they have the rights to Trevor Lawrence. Like I mentioned to Matt, they traded Calais Campbell for a 5th-round pick, cut Marquise Goodwin, no compensation there. They're trying to cut Leonard Fournette. They traded Nick Foles. They've traded Jalen Ramsey last year. They have gotten rid of basically the entire team that took them to the AFC Championship a couple years ago. Actually, I think only 3 starters remain from that team. That's insane. It is a clear vision that Jacksonville has. They want Trevor Lawrence. And I don't blame them. I think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback prospect that I've probably ever seen. I think he's better than Andrew Luck. I was only 3 years old when Peyton Manning was coming out, so I can't speak on him. Trevor Lawrence is the best college football quarterback that I've seen that's going to be draft eligible. When you're the best, you have all the leverage. And if I'm Trevor Lawrence, there is a 0% chance that I'm signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I hate this. I don't agree with what Eli Manning did or Bo Jackson or John Elway or any of those guys that tried to pick where they got drafted. But in this scenario, Trevor Lawrence is a guy that is going to win multiple Super Bowls, in my opinion. Jacksonville is just not a winning franchise. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Jags because that 2017 year when they went to the AFC Championship, that was fun to watch. It was cool to see a team that is usually down be great. But with the current ownership and regime that they've got right now, Trevor Lawrence, don't do this to yourself. Please go somewhere that is going to help you. The Jacksonville Jaguars, since 2010, have won 3 or fewer games 3 times. In that same span, they had 1 winning season, and that was a couple years ago when they went to the AFC Championship. They are more likely to win 1, 2, or 3 games than they are to have a winning record. That is garbage. And I understand the point of the draft is to make your team better. Take the best player so you won't have those 3-win seasons. But man, starting this year, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be playing 2 home games in London. 2. That is not what you want the future face of the NFL to be having to deal with. I'm not trying to send Trevor Lawrence to London. If I'm Roger Goodell, I need Trevor Lawrence here in the States representing our league as the next big star to maybe fight Mahomes for the next 15 years. I don't need him going to London twice a year, man. It's not a great look. And there's been rumors that the Jags will not be staying in Jacksonville. That team's probably looking to leave. The owner is clearly in it for the money, which good for him. I don't blame him. But there's a good chance. A lot of people think this team could end up in London. Now, I personally don't think that's possible. I don't see how logistically it would work. I don't think the other owners would approve of it because they don't want to have to send their teams to play in London every year. Especially, the Texans, Titans, and Colts. Those division teams would have to go to London every single year. I just don't think that's feasible. Their stadium lease is up in 2029. It's only 9 years from now. And while Trevor Lawrence could have a nice little 8-year run there, what's going to happen in 2029? If this franchise still kind of just flounders around here and there, does good once in a while, we're going to see this team in maybe Toronto. We might see them in, some other city here in the continental U.S. Don't send that team to London. Don't send Trevor Lawrence to London. I know it's kind of it's a bad look, in my opinion, but Trevor Lawrence needs to do the right thing for himself and for the NFL and say no to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's my soapbox.
Fair points.
I don't need to see touchdown seasons going to London twice a year. I hate it.
If they send any team over to London, I'm gonna be thoroughly shocked. Like you said, I don't see how the Colts, Titans, and Texans would even be okay with that. It's going to be so bad, especially some team like the Colts. The Colts are all the way up in Indianapolis. I mean, that's a flight, you know. And Nashville for Tennessee, that's not an easy flight either. Texas, that division is scattered, and it's going to be horrible flights for everybody involved. I couldn't see how you're going to send Jacksonville over to London and make teams fly out there. I can't see it.
No, I don't think it should happen. But with this partnership that they've had, man, the rumors are out there, and Trevor Lawrence, don't do this. Don't do this. It's a bad look to say no to a team. I get it, but man, it's an even worse look to be going to London twice a year. So that's my soapbox. You guys can respond.
All I know is that I'm going to have soapbox next week.
There you go. Look forward to Will. I believe he has something to say about Jared Goff.
Yeah, I will. Next week, I am definitely going to be talking about how Jared Goff is the worst quarterback on any NFL roster next week, and you can book it.
Hey, I'm with it. I'm not a Jared Goff guy at all. I think
I have statistics to prove it, and I will make sure to prove to you that I will. You can list any NFL quarterback, and I will take him over Jared Goff.
There you go. Hey, I'm with it. I'm with it. So this is our show. We call it GMs for Hire. Here we are for Matt, Jamil, Will. I'm RJ. Let us know if you like it. Comment below. Any suggestions? Anything you got? Give us some questions. Any comments? Maybe we'll mention it in the next show. And we'll start off the show with some questions, some answers for you. Mailbag, if you want to call it that. However you want to do it. But yeah, just like, subscribe, leave comments below, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Yeah.